It is so great to be here with Richmond Tea Party today. People who get that we must stop the insanity in Washington, D.C. I can honestly say that being a part of the Richmond Tea Party has truly been one of the most amazing experiences in my life. Working with committed and passionate and determined people to change our country back to a constitutionally limited government. You know, 2 years ago, I gave my very first Tea Party speech on this stage in the cold and the rain. How many of you are here for that? And what was the debt 2 years ago? $11 trillion. I talked about the dismal future we were leaving our children and our grandchildren. But guess what? 2 years later, the debt is over $14 trillion. And the concern is no longer about the future for our children, but about families struggling to make ends meet now. The financial crisis has reached code red. The current path we are on will necessarily lead to high inflation, interest rate hikes, a continued weakening of our dollar, and a lower standard of living for all of us. So let's recap where we are today, shall we? We have a $14.3 trillion debt. We have an over $3.5 trillion budget. We have a $1.6 trillion deficit. People are unemployed. Inflation is on the rise. Gas prices are $4 a gallon and rising. And what was the response from Washington, D.C.? $353 million in cuts. So let me hear you say yes or no to these questions. Yes or no? How many of you are happy with the $100 billion in suggested cuts? How many of you are happy with the $61 billion in cuts voted on by the House? How many of you are happy with the $38 billion budget compromise? How many of you are happy with what ended up being $353 million in actual cuts? And the big question being floated right now, how many of you want the debt ceiling raised so the Washington politicians can spend more money? They want to spend more money they don't have while adding it to the taxpayer credit card. You know, there's a disquiet coming over our country from American people and Virginians, and we have all sensed it for the last couple of years. It was what has caused literally millions of Americans from across this country to become engaged in the Tea Party movement. I think we are here and identify with the Tea Party for two reasons. The first is that we feel America is being erased before our eyes. We have a shifting mentality from what Americans can accomplish through innovation and hard work to what can government give me. But more government means less freedom for all of us. And we have certainly seen government grow exponentially in the last few years. But we love our country. And it is a feeling that wells up deep inside of us, and we know that we must do everything in our power to protect what our founding fathers worked so hard to create. And by God's grace, I will fight with my last breath to demand that Washington, D.C. recognize that the Constitution still matters and that we are free people. Yeah. But you know what? It's not just about the erasing of America. There's also this sense that the Washington, D.C. Beltway has expanded beyond the Beltway and is invading into the four walls of our living room. It's impeding our livelihoods. It is a scary time, and we all know it. We get it. But the Washington establishment doesn't get it. The president doesn't get it. The Democrat and the Republican leadership in Congress don't get it. But we get it. We understand that it has fallen to us, to you, me, and the Tea Party movement, to stand at the gates of liberty and protect our children and those yet to come. The road ahead will be hard, and we have no choice. There has been a dereliction of duty by the Washington establishment. In Washington, it has been a mentality that would like us to be the home of the broke, not the home of the brave. Yeah. And even we have politicians now running for United States Senate who created this mess and want us to elect them to the U.S. Senate. No way. Is that what you want? No. Is this the America that you want? No. The worst part off is it doesn't have to be this way. This president thinks shared sacrifice means some people sacrifice by sharing their money with everyone else. The president, the Democrat leadership, and the Republican leadership, all the Washington establishment is betraying us. And now our nation is facing the most significant threat in its existence, perhaps in its history, our national debt. And it isn't just about what it means for our country, folks. It's about our own standard of living, each one of us. But there is hope, because we have our American character, and it is not dead. A character that springs from the rights and liberty endowed to us by who? And we face this challenge, we must remember a truth that has stood for 235 years. A truth that President Obama disavowed in his budget speech last week. The truth that America is not great because of the government in Washington. Neither the Congress nor the president makes us who we are as a people. The enormous and noble role that this nation has played in the hard and difficult history of the world was not written by politicians of either party. America is unique as a nation because we are founded on eternal concepts. We are free people, bound by liberty, anchored in faith. And our freedom is not a gift from government, but from God. Yeah. America is great because Americans are free to be great. America is good and noble because through our liberty, we are set free to be good and noble. I know this truth because I have seen this truth as a member and a worker in the Tea Party movement. I've seen firsthand the American character. As president of the Richmond Tea Party, I saw thousands of you Richmonders come together with a desire to save our country. As chairwoman of the Virginia Tea Party Federation, I saw the American character in the thousands of you who came to the Virginia Tea Party Convention last October. And I've seen the American character marching with you in the streets of Richmond and in Washington, D.C. We get it. And we will not give up. No. Chris Matthews and Rachel Maddow, hear me now. Our Tea Party movement is driving the national dialogue. And our Tea Party movement is going to change the course of history. Starting now. We must stop Washington's out of control spending. There must be no increase in the debt ceiling. Establishment Washington will offer all kinds of compromises to get us to support the debt ceiling. Raise the debt ceiling, they'll say. We'll give you some of those cuts you want. We'll make lots of promises that we will promise to do later. Well, we saw what we got last week, what a Washington compromise looks like. $100 billion in cuts turned to $68 billion, turned to $38 billion, which ended up with $350 million in cuts. Enough Washington compromises. There must be no increase in the debt ceiling, no conditions, no compromises, no excuses. Because holding the line on the debt ceiling is the only way to stop Washington's out of control spending. We get that. Even if Washington doesn't get that, we face a clear and present danger. We need more Tea Party leaders in Congress, in the House, and in the Senate to help our allies that are there now. We must recover our American character and an abiding and deep yearning for individual liberty. And we can only recover our American character and our liberty by beginning at the beginning, by reclaiming a devotion to the fundamental and founding issues of our nation: individual liberty and individual responsibility, economic freedom, and constitutional authority. The great Virginia patriot George Mason said over 200 years ago that our republic would have to go back to what he called first principles every generation or so. That time has come again. This generation must rediscover and reapply these first principles. History is calling us. We must answer united in those first principles. United in our determination, united in our conviction, united in our passion, united in our commitment, and united by our American character. The road will be hard, but we can prevail because we have shown what we can do in 2010, and we will show what we can do in 2012.